Welcome to Connect to Florida. So on Sundays, I like to do kind of a recap of the week in Florida. What went on in Florida, because there's always so much going on in Florida. So good or bad, we cover it. Unfortunately, lately, it's been a lot of things that aren't so good. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Florida legislative meeting that they had last week. I guess I would put it that way. Legislative session. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. So the session ended last Friday, and I want to talk to you about the things that came out of that. Some things are really important. One thing is real estate related, but everything that they talked about really does impact Floridians and possibly you as well if you're thinking about moving to Florida. So on this channel, I like to make sure that you know both the good and the bad in everything. And as it relates to things that are changing, new laws, new bills that are passed in Florida, I just like you to know everything, and then you determine if that's a good or a bad thing for you in your world. So let's talk about real estate first. So as it relates to vacation rentals, and this has been talked about a lot, and also at the county level, there's been a lot of counties that have implemented changes to say no more home away, no more VRBO, no more bed and breakfast type of situations in a neighborhood. So what I mean by that, and this is common, I get these calls all the time from people that want to buy something in Florida as an investment, and they always say, I want to be able to Airbnb. That's what I want to be able to do. And what that says to us as real estate agents is you want to be able to rent nightly or weekends or weekly, something along those lines. And if you've been looking to buy something in Florida and do that, you are probably seeing that it's becoming near impossible. There are still some counties that allow it. So if you're looking for that, you know how to reach me. Call, text, or email. My information is always down in the description box. There are some counties that still allow it, but there are many, and I'm going to say probably 70% of Florida, you can't legally do it. So there's been a lot of leeway with that. Like many of you may not know, in Cape Coral, you can't do nightly rentals. Now you might say, what are you talking about, Barrett? My neighbor does it. The person across the street does it. They're making a ton of money. Well, in Cape Coral, it's actually weekly, but it's not really been enforced. Now it's going to be enforced. Next one, and this one's been talked about in Florida, but you may not know about this. So they have actually passed this. Social media protection. If you are 14 years old in Florida, you can't have your own social media account. Now, if you're 15, you can have a social media account, so like Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, one of those, you can have it, but your parents have to take responsibility for it. So essentially, they're signing as being responsible for you. But if you're 14, you can't have it. So that is their attempt at trying to help the mental health of children. Will it work? I don't know. But they've been talking about that for a while. I know Governor DeSantis has been behind that for a long time now. And now they've finally passed that one. Next one, and I like this one, they have approval to increase greatly. I think it was 35%. Increase the number of doctors in the state of Florida. That is so badly needed. I can tell you, and you hear this on my channel all the time, there's definitely a doctor shortage. I mean, there definitely is. And like I said, I always tell you the truth on this channel. It's hard to get in with a good doctor, and I would go one step farther. It's hard to get in with a doctor that's very, very proficient in English with you. So what I mean by that is, obviously they're a doctor. They certainly have a higher education level than I do. But if I cannot communicate with you, especially when I'm sick, especially when I'm really sick, especially when I need surgery, that's a problem. That's a big Achilles heel in Florida. So you will find in Florida that a lot of times you kind of get sidelined to the PA. And I say sidelined again, that person has far more education than I do, But when you're sick, when you're worried about your health, when it's a life and death situation potentially, you don't want to be marginalized off to the PA. You want to see a doctor who's competent and who speaks fluently the language. You can understand them and they can understand you. I'm going to tell you something. Like I said, I'm always transparent on this channel. I had a situation twice, and I switched the pharmacy, but 2 times I was given the absolutely wrong medication from a major pharmacy. And it was really simply a matter of the person who was filling the prescription had very, very, very little English. And when I went in and said, look, you gave me the wrong, this is not it. This is the wrong prescription. They didn't have enough English to understand that I was saying, you gave me the wrong prescription. They literally couldn't understand that until I went on my app, said it in English, and showed it to them in Spanish. That's scary. So I like that one. I hope we get more really good doctors. Next one, and this is pretty impactful as well. It's basically illegal now to be homeless. If you're homeless, you can be arrested. So what they're trying to do is stop the situations where every time you stop at a corner, there's a homeless person with a sign and you don't know who's real and who isn't. And maybe you're inclined to help somebody, but you have no idea if it's real or it's not. You know, I can give you again a real life scenario where I'm looking at somebody on the corner and I'm feeling really bad for them. And as I drove past and I looked in my rear view mirror, because my husband has me convinced that some of these people are scamming you. So I look back in my rear view mirror and the guy with his sign that says, anything will help, I'm homeless, family, you know the signs, taped to the back of his sign was his iPhone. He was literally doing this. So listen. And then I can tell you other areas of Florida that I visited that I personally felt very uncomfortable. One of them in particular was St. Augustine in the downtown area, which is beautiful. I love it there. They have great restaurants there. But you literally can have homeless people laying across the walkway where the shops are, literally laying there. And it makes me feel terrible anyway. It makes me feel completely uncomfortable for many, many reasons. I don't want to see another human being in that predicament. And they have a little park. They have this little, like, beautiful little park in the center. The entire park, when I was there for a weekend, there was probably 40 homeless people in there in wheelchairs. There was people that were screaming. There was people that were like half nodded off. It just was, you're looking at little children and they can't go in the park and play because this is going on. Listen, it's sad, it's horrible, but it really does need to be dealt with. It's way above my pay level to know how to deal with that, but I do understand that they have to start somewhere. Is arresting people the right thing to do? You know what? I don't create the laws. I'm just reading them to you. But right now, that's the latest thing that's going on. It's basically illegal to be homeless. So you know how marijuana is legal in Florida? What is no longer legal in terms of being able to be sold at some of these, what they call like green shops where you can go in and buy cannabis. You can't buy the kind anymore that will create a high, which for me, I think that's perfectly fine. If you need to be, you know, sort of in that state of mind, maybe you have cancer and that's how you're being treated. I understand that. That should be given to you, in my opinion, by your doctor, because that seems like something that, I don't know, if you're in that high state, I don't know that you really should be driving a car, right? I mean, I don't know a lot about that. Again, out of my pay scale, definitely not my wheelhouse, but that is what was passed, is that you can't walk into one of those sort of green shops and buy anything that's going to cause that high, which to me makes sense, because what if you smoked that stuff and then you were kind of loopy and you got in your car to drive? That doesn't seem like a good idea to me. And then the last one that is significant if you have school-age children, or maybe even if you don't, it just might be a concern to you. And this is one that we do hear on the news all the time. So because the governor, DeSantis, has been very vocal about a lot of this, but basically no more identity politics is the way that they're wording it. So a teacher can't develop a teaching program that would have what they are calling identity politics. And like I said, you can hear that one all over the news on any channel. So the governor has stood behind that one for a long time. There are people in Florida who feel good about it. There are people in Florida who don't feel good about it. But again, my job here is to tell you what's going on, because if you have school-age children, that could be significant to you. So there's definitely a lot of improvement to be made in the schools in the state of Florida. They definitely have a teacher shortage. And the reason for that, I think, is because the pay is not commensurate with the living. You can't really be on a teacher's salary and afford Naples, Florida. So there's some issues with that, and hopefully maybe this is a step in the right direction to start working towards fixing some of that, at least talking about education as a whole. But those are the main points. They passed a lot. They're talking about a lot, but they did set a budget going into 2025. But those are the main things that are relatively impactful for people that live or are thinking of living in Florida. So I wanted to be sure to bring that to you. If you have any thoughts on any of that, let me know down in comments. I would love to hear them.